For the security camera installation, go to 1449 in this video. This project is going to be to remove this shorter handle here and see if we can get this one on there. Yeah, this is in there real tight. We'll try this first. Punch in from the top here. Punch down on that. I think it's too big a diameter. See if I can find a rod. Try this. Well, looks like that's a pipe. We'll go back to trying to turn it. Okay, let's see if I can find a pipe wrench. Actually, might be able to do that with vice grip. So one of my vice grips is at my granddaughter's house, so I'm going to try. I had put a screw in there. See if I can take that out. I didn't have the right screw here. Let me try again, see if I can find the right one, or one that's similar. Of course, now I can't get this one out. Let's go back to a shorter screw. Since this is already ruined, let's see if we can cut this. See if we can cut it with these guys. Wasn't strong enough to cut it all the way through, so since it's part way, there's a groove in there. I'll see if I can break it the rest of the way. But that didn't work either. I was able to find a shorter screw, so we put that in. I'm afraid I'm going to bend this metal. This is a hollow pipe. The other option would be to cut this here. Put this inside the pipe. Guess we'll go back to cutting this. Now we have our hole here. I'll sand this wood piece down and see if we can get that to work. I'm trying to keep the sawdust to a minimum by using my shop vac here at the same time. So what I was doing here was trying to get this in here so it wouldn't wiggle. And at the very end, I realized that this was too skinny, but this needed to be shaved down. So when I push it in, you could see the ridges it made. So I tried to concentrate on this part to where I'd get it in there and I don't have any play here. So we'll pound that in good and we'll put a screw in here and call it done. Yeah, that's pretty tight. There's no play here, so we're ready for the screw. So again, I'm a big fan of pilot holes, so I'm going to drill a little pilot hole in that. That's a wrap. So I think this is made for a child, so there's no edge on it here. And since my wife and daughter are going to be using it, I'm going to grind an edge on that. Okay, so here's the edge. So hopefully that'll do some cutting. So I glued this with super glue 2 days ago. And then yesterday I put a coat of super glue on the outside. You can just maybe see it. I don't know how this camera is going to come out. So then I'll put this back up and see if it's strong enough to work. If not, I'll use some JB Weld. So the last time I lost the 2 screws that came out of here. So I got this one, which I'm going to try and make it work. The head goes through, so I want to check the thing that it screws into and see if that's going to work. Of course, it's too big a diameter, which is probably why I didn't go through this hole. So I'm going to have to make the hole in the bracket up here bigger too, but leave enough for the sheet metal screw to bite into it. So we'll see how we can make this work. So here's the screw. I've got this template here. Probably not going to be able to read it. But it goes through a 7/64 and not a 3/32. So we'll do 7/64 on the first piece, and then where the threads go, we'll do 3/32. See if that makes it work. This is probably overkill for this, but we'll get her done anyway. Yeah, let's go one size smaller, higher, bigger. It should be 1/8 of an inch. Okay, 1/8 of an inch works there. 3/32. Hopefully we'll leave enough for some threads to bite into it. So we'll put our 3/32 here. Thinking this screw might be too long. I don't want to go all the way through into the solar piece. I'm actually using the screw now as a tap to put some threads in this. I'm putting the screw in as far as I can here so it doesn't hit the solar wires on the other side. Hindsight, I think one screw would have worked, so probably doing all this for nothing. Finally ready to mount the whole thing back up on the shed now. Sorry, I didn't have the camera pointing at the right location. Not sure of the best angle for this because we're in the woods, but we'll try that one and see how it works out. Hopefully this thing will turn on tonight and they'll be happy. Today I want to move one of my security cameras from over by the pond, which is over here. I want to put it on the outside back of that shed. So the first thing we'll do is check inside to see what the best place to place it is based on wiring, because this needs a 115 volt outlet. So this is inside the shed. The nearest outlet to where I will have this camera is going to be right here. So I'm thinking I'll run up the wall, across the top, and then probably in that corner there someplace is where we can punch through and put the camera. So I'm thinking I'd like to get it up close to that cross member there, but we'll see what's the easiest thing to do here. The first thing I want to do is move all this stuff out of the way so I can get back in that corner and investigate further. The next thing is I want to get up in that corner and move some stuff, rearrange it a little bit so I have better visibility into that corner. So the game plan would be to take this outlet, go up the wall, over here to that corner. So to look at that corner closer, I'm thinking I could come across here and then go down into this corner right over here. So now I want to go outside and see if that's going to be a good location for it. We'll check it out. So now we're outside. Here's my shed. There's the window. So up in the corner by the window, we'll be up in there someplace. I think that should be good enough for what I need. Here's the camera that I want to use. It was being used for a lot of the dam work when I was working on my pond. So it's sort of an extra one, so we'll just pick that up and see if we can get that back to the shed. We don't need this extension cord anymore, so I'll make that back towards the little shed and get that disconnected and put away. So I'm going to need a mounting bracket for that camera, so I picked up this one off one of my old broken cameras, and I'll see if I can make that work on that. So I think this bracket will work, except the camera that it came off of had a bigger diameter screw. So I'm going to have to see if I can find a smaller diameter screw that will go in that hole, and maybe a washer. Now the tricky part, see if I can find a screw that'll fit those threads. Yeah, I was afraid of that. I think that's going to be a metric screw, and all I have are SAE screws. So this is SAE. At this point, I'm trying to find an SAE or a metric tap that fits the hole in the camera. Once I do that, then I can take the corresponding
die and rethread the screw to match.
Looks like the 4mm .75 is the best fit. So I wonder if I can just rethread one of these other ones. Okay, I think what I'm going to do here is I can't find the right combination of tap and dies, so I got a screw that's close. I'm just not going to force it in there very far so I don't destroy any threads. So we'll make this work temporarily. Of course, what I got to do is I got to find a short version of this. So let me dig around some more. Okay, I found a washer and a shorter version. We'll see if we can make this work. So this is what has to go through the hole, so I'm going to use this bit here, see if I can get a hole about the right size. I guess we'll put a hole right in here and call that good. Alright, let's check that out. Of course, now we got to get up there, so I'm going to see if this little giant ladder can be configured to go over that lawnmower without moving it. We'll see how lucky we are.
What I'm doing here is making the side closest to the shed a little bit shorter and the side away from the shed longer. That'll push the top end closer to the shed where I'm standing.
Well, that actually worked out pretty well. One side of the ladder is one notch lower than the other, which gets me closer to the shed. So now we'll see if we can get this mounted.
I want to get the screw in far enough where there's just a little bit sticking out, just enough to slip the bracket from the camera over it and cause it to have a tight fit. Now we can fish the cable through the hole and go back in the shed and plug it in.
Not the best job, but we'll see if we can make that work. The next step is to test this out. So here's the part that has to plug in to the 115 volts, and then this is your typical micro USB. Got an extension cord for now. Eventually we'll put a better 115 volt wire to this location. So this is the look, and you can see I want to turn it so I don't see this overhang here. Plus I want to see down closer and maybe to the right over by my wood chip piles. So we'll see if we can do that adjustment. So this is what it looks like on the outside. Definitely want to get some adjustment here. see what that looks like. So here's the latest. I think I want to turn it a little bit more to the wood pile. I don't think I want to go down anymore because I want to be able to see out into the woods. So here's the latest. I think I want to see a little bit more in this area. So we'll do a little bit more tweaking. After going back and forth several times, this is what I ended up with. So we'll try that for a while. We can always adjust it later. So I'm running out of time for today. So before I quit, I want to close up that hole a little bit so I got the glue gun warming up. And I'm also going to measure how many feet of wire or extension cord I need to go from that outlet over to the corner where the camera is. So it looks about like 5.5 feet down, and round up 10 feet would be nice. So I have about 4 foot of USB cable too, so if I take that off the 10 foot, that would be 6 foot and 5.5. So I could get by with a 12-foot extension cord. Let's see if I can fill in that hole a little bit with my hot melt glue gun. So I forgot to turn the camera on, but there's some hot melt glue in there now. We'll see if that does what it needs. This is a follow-up from the other day when I put moved one of my security cameras from the pond to the back of the shed. It's 115 volts, so I had to run this temporary extension cord. Now I want to make it a little more permanent, so I've purchased a thinner extension cord that I'm going to mount permanently. So it basically has to go to this outlet and runs up to the ceiling and then over. So we'll get some of this stuff out of the way first. There's very little current with these cameras, so I don't need a very heavy extension cord. So I picked up these cheap ones from Walmart. They're 12 foot long. I think that'll give me enough to get over there. So I've got a box of these that I have left over from way back in the day when we were running coax cable. I think this will probably be good enough to get me through. So we've got it set up, ready to go. Here's the hole that I filled in. It feels like it is filled in with glue, so that's a good thing. On to the next project. This pretty much wraps up this video. I hope you enjoyed it. In the next videos, I will be painting the trim on my sheds and working on some small projects around the house.